Hey guys, Scott Dyer here for Game Centric TV, coming to you with a Game Centric TV first. I am giving you guys my very first Skype interview for you guys on this particular channel. And with me, my guinea pig of sorts for this particular interview is John Shuey Schubach. He is the self-proclaimed pattern builder godfather. So, John, how are you tonight?
I'm good, man.
I'm going to make this a trend with all of my interviews going forward, and I have to ask you, are you seated comfortably?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So that's always a great start. We got to make sure we have a very comfortable seating position, a great foundation with which to build this great interview.
That's right.
Yes. So, John, you have a very interesting gift, skill, life skill, if you will. Would you care to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I build patterns or like pixel art with Tetris. So where most people would play, a game of Tetris to, either clear lines and try and get like the highest score they could get or the highest level or, beat somebody in multiplayer, I'm actually like trying to draw stuff with the pieces on the playfield.
That's really cool and very interesting. And I remember when you first sent your message to us for the interview, you're like, I build things, I make art in Tetris, and I'm like, that's something I want to see. So of course I clicked on your videos and checked out a few of them, and I was very blown away. The fact that you can even it was just one of those things I never thought you could do with Tetris, because like you said, people are playing Tetris because they want to clear lines, they want to get the highest score, they want to beat out the other person if they're playing multiplayer, things like that. But it's like, you just want to like make like Game Boys or the Apple logo and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's legit, man. That's fairly to moderately legit. So I guess then the next obvious follow-up question was, how did you kind of get into this sort of, I guess we'll call it a methodology of pattern building, as we're going to call it going forward here?
Yeah, it was really unexpected. What's kind of tripped out is I started playing Tetris seriously like when it came out on the NES, and I don't remember what year that was, but I was about maybe 17 and I'm almost 43 now. So once I first played that, I was hooked. I was just playing it all the time, and all you did on NES was just, see how high you could get. That was the goal, like, get past level 19 if possible. And I went through kind of waves of playing Tetris off and on, because after the NES era and some of the other games that came out like Game Boy and stuff, the like goal of Tetris never really changed. It was always just, okay, how many lines can I get? It was fun to play. It was relaxing to play, almost like therapy in a way, like to help chill me out or relax me. And after, I don't remember like when exactly, I think it was around maybe 2009 or so, I started playing Tetris again, and I was playing it on Facebook, and then I started playing it on TetrisFriends.com, and they had these missions where they make you do stuff, that was out of the ordinary of just playing a normal game. And I was like, man, this is a really cool concept. You could get like awards and you could complete these different missions. And that was the first thing that really started making me think outside the box of what normal Tetris was. And then I had discovered in TGM they had this thing called the secret grade, where if you build this pattern in the playfield, you would get a secret score. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh wow, that's really cool, and I tried doing it, and I was like, man, this is harder than I initially thought it was going to be. But then once I got the hang of it, I just got hooked. I just kept building secret grades repeatedly over and over and over again, and to the point where I could build it all the way up to the completion point that I saw on TGM was the 19th row. And then I started wondering, I wonder if I could get to the 20th row, which pretty much you have to like clear a line above the top of the playfield so you can't see what's happening up there. And when I finally did that, then I felt like, okay, I've hit like a holy grail, at least for myself in Tetris. And once I did that, and I did that repeatedly, then I started thinking, well, I wonder what else I could build with Tetris. Maybe I could start, like building other staircase shapes and stuff like that. So I started mocking stuff up on paper. I would just like think in my head, okay, what's another variation of this or whatever I can do. And I started doing a bunch of variations, and then that just kept spawning off into, maybe I could draw a smiley face, or you know what I mean? So I just kept evolving it over time, just using my imagination to see what else I could come up with.
Sure. I mean, that's a very cool way to get into it. It's sort of, you almost kind of, no pun intended. Well, for this show, I'm going to intend the pun. You almost kind of fell into it, of sorts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it was very like unexpected, and it just spiraled like out of control in a good way.
that's very cool. I mean, and like you said, it's a very a unique way of looking into how to do different things with a very, at its essence, a very simple game, and how to do various things and how to sort of break out of the box a little bit and think about it in a very different way. So, I guess then, when you do these patterns, do you always go in with I know you said you kind of write things down and draw it out first. Do you always sort of draw it out first, or do you just kind of, like an artist, they kind of free form it and see kind of what takes shape, and then you're like, okay, I want to make this shape, and then you sort of form the shape as it goes?
Yeah, for the most part, I always will get an idea in my head of something I want to try, and then I'll generally mock it up like in Paint.net, or some kind of photo program. I have a pre-made grid. It's just basically a 10 by 20 grid, and I fill in the squares matching up how I want the pattern to go, and then I'll have that open off to the side and fire up my game that I use. Is called Nopomino, and I'll use that with the mock-up to the side, and then just start building it as I'm looking at the mock-up. I rarely will build something just on the fly. Like, I have done that a few times, and when I first started trying to do that, I found that if I tried building on the fly, I would kind of like lose track of where I was or what I was trying to do. So it helped to have that visual reference to continually look over at.
Sure. So it's almost like an engineer. You have your blueprint, and then from the blueprint, then you start building the construct or the piece of art that you're going to then display proudly for all of us to see.
Totally, yep. Yeah, that's a good comparison. And when I used to first started doing it, it was pretty much just as simple as I said. I'd make the mock-up, I would start building it, I would refer to the mock-up as I was building it, and then I would finish. But then as I started evolving into more complex patterns, it got to a point where I would start building a certain section of something I was working on, and I was like, man, like, I need to think about this a little bit more about, it's not just as simple as what I've been using. Like, with more complex patterns, it got to the point where I had to kind of think in new ways. Like, one time someone called it Tetris Inception. I had to build a pattern inside of a pattern in order to like create a couple of specific lines of colors. When you start building patterns in because before, when I started building patterns, I would just build them with no regard to what color. I was just worried about empty holes and filled holes or whatever. But then when you start thinking about terms of color, you really have to strategize a lot more. And on real complex patterns, I've actually paused the video and then mocked up something separate and said, okay, in my head, I'm thinking, how can I specifically clear these two lines so I can keep going?
So with that, then I guess then the next natural question becomes, what has been sort of the most complex pattern that you've put together thus far?
The fireworks explosion, that was one of the first real difficult patterns for me, because I had to not only think about shape, like you said, where you oftentimes a simple build would be, you build like a couple rows, and then when you're working on the next row, you might just have to build like a stage, and then leave one piece open where you could stack some other stuff on top of the stage, and then drop a piece in there and clear out the stage, leaving what you stacked on top of it. But with the fireworks explosion, I had to do a combination of that, plus make it so that whatever piece I stuck down into the stage, it would leave a remaining little stub sticking up above it. So it was a combination, and that really made me think in a new way that I hadn't thought of before with Tetris building. So,
Was that also the one that you're the most proud of putting together?
man, it's hard to say that I would be most proud of one particular pattern because they're all so different and unique, and the journey is, I think, more enjoyable for me than just completing one, one specific one. I mean, sure, there's like, some certain patterns that were really unique for the first time I built them because it was something, no one had ever seen and something I had never thought of before. And like the ring around the rosy, I did this 3-level ring around the rosy where I built these 3 levels of rectangles, and then I dropped a line piece in and made it go in a circle around each of these 3 rectangles that I built. And I had never done something like that before, so that was really unique, and it kind of stood out a little more in my mind of the patterns I've done. But yeah, it'd be really tough to say like one specific pattern is my favorite.
Well, they're all your babies, so you're proud of them all equally, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're all special. I can't like love one or more than another.
Okay. So then, when you're building these patterns and things like that, do you build? It sounds like when you just mentioned the ring around the rosy, it sounds like you're not just building shapes and things, but you're building quite literally a pattern or sort of movement of sorts, as well as you're clearing blocks and things like that. So I guess then how does that, when you want to do something with movement, how does that, I guess, planning for something like that, how does that differ than just saying, I'm going to build a Game Boy or the Apple logo or whatever? How does that sort of differ from a planning perspective?
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, like with a few of the patterns I did where I would drop a line piece down into the build, most of the build was spent getting the whole playfield staged for dropping a line in. So it was very similar to any other pattern I would build. It was, just mocking up what the pattern would look like, building it all the way up to the point where it was ready. But then where it gets tricky is when you get up to the very top of the playfield, you have less space to work with and less time if you're not like pausing the game. So you once you get up to that higher level in the playfield, you have to strategize even more sometimes to be ready for, oh crap, I'm going to top out if I don't like clear this the right way or get this line moved over. There was a pattern I did a while back that was inspired by this guy in the Tetris community named Farter. And I don't know why he used that name, but he figured out some cool mechanics with the playfield where if you rotated a line piece when there were other blocks in specific relation to it, it would cause the piece to actually like levitate its way up the playfield. So he had actually like done a mock-up of it, and then I built it, and I got it to the point where it was built, but then when I tried doing the actual levitation of the piece, I couldn't figure it out. So I ended up sending him a replay of what I had built and asked him to execute the levitation of the piece. So in that particular video, it says something like Shuey's build, Farter's execution.
I guess then the other question, you mentioned that you're using a special program to actually execute the builds and things like that. Do you want to talk about that particular program? Because I assume you're not going out, you're not, firing up the NES and playing Tetris and trying to build other stuff within Tetris as seen in the NES. You're using a special program, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, what's pretty cool is when I first started building patterns, I actually did them on Tetris Friends in live games. So there was no pause. You were dealing with increased speed because every time you kept, clearing a level, your speed would increase. So I don't know how many patterns I built on Tetris Friends, but enough that I think I kind of like established myself as a pretty good pattern builder just on Tetris Friends alone because you're working in so many more variables of gameplay. But then eventually it got to where if I was going to build something more complex, I had to use something that gave me more flexibility and freedom, and that was a game called Nulpimino. And It's an open source game. It's totally free. A lot of people in the Tetris community like that particular version of Tetris, and they use it. And it's what's cool about that one is it's got so many different game modes. Like they have modes that emulate or simulate other Tetris versions. Like they have a one mode that simulates NES Tetris. They have another one that simulates Tetris the Grandmaster series. And then there's a practice mode, which is what I use a lot now, because in that I can pause the game. Or what's cool about No Pimento too is if let's say I'm working on a build and it's like, oh man, I don't have time to like sit here for an hour and a half. I gotta go to whatever. I gotta go to the grocery store or something. I can end my game too, like just top out, kill myself, and then a replay will be generated for that particular game. Then I can go back and reload that replay and just play it up to the point where I left off and then resume. So that's really helpful. Like when I was working on a negative secret grade, that was like one of my first holy grails, because I had done just the standard secret grade, and then I saw on the forums someone was talking about doing an inverse secret grade, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. When I started trying it, it was a lot more difficult. It took a lot more time, and I got like halfway through it on my lunch hour one day at work, and I was like, man, I don't have the time to like play more, and I couldn't pause my game, so I just ended up killing myself and then starting over again from scratch. And later, I was talking to Kitaro, and he was like, well, you can like kill yourself and then have a replay, and I was like, I had no idea. So
I mean, that's pretty cool. So I guess then with this stuff, so I assume you would create your builds, create your patterns, and then you post these on YouTube. Do you have like an outlet for where you post these so others can share and enjoy the work that you are doing?
Yep, yeah, I post all my new videos on YouTube. I also have actually been posting videos for other players as well. Like there's a guy named Question Mark who's been doing some Phantom Mania runs, and every time he completes a new whatever achievement he's going for, he sends me his replay, and I actually record them and upload them for him. And he still uploads it on his channel, but since my channel has more subscribers and more views, it gives him an opportunity to get more exposure for what he's doing.
So before we go on too far, you have to explain what a phantom run is, because I saw one video of that, and again,
Okay.
my mind was just blown. So you have to explain what this phantom running stuff is.
Yeah, Phantom Mania is where the whole game is invisible. You can see your piece just for like a split second, or until it's placed, and then as soon as it's placed, it disappears. So you have no visible reference on the screen. So you pretty much have to store all your references of what the playfield looks like in memory as you continue to go. And yeah, like I can't. I've played some progressive invisibility before where I got like 94 lines or something, but I can't come close to like what Gitaru or Question Mark have accomplished. But what Question Mark did was by far, in my opinion, the most amazing invisible Tetris run so far. Granted, he's not using the Eureka rotation system, which is in the Tetris Grandmaster series. So a lot of the like elitist players or like diehard TGM players are almost kind of scoffing at Question Mark's achievement, because they're like, well, you didn't do it with classic rule and TGM rotation system. But all you have to do is watch the video to realize it's still amazing what he's doing. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. It's if you're playing through 999 levels of a game without seeing anything that you're doing other than just your mental reference as you're going along, I think that's incredible.
And it just goes to show you what capabilities, what facilities we in the human mind can accomplish.
Yeah,
and it's just quite literally mind blowing.
Yeah, it makes me wonder like how far we'll be able to keep pushing the boundaries of Tetris gameplay.
It looks like you guys have quite a ways to go. I mean, if this is like the start of it, imagine like 10 years from now what you guys are doing, and this is really like, this is just real fascinating stuff. I'm like, I still can't just, like I said, I watched the one video of the Phantom Mania run, and I'm just like, how do you keep all that in your head at one time? There's just no, like,
Yeah,
I'd like to think I have a pretty good spatial memory, but wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, I
Same
can
here,
remember
man.
where I parked in the parking lot, and I'm usually pretty good at that. And I'm like, okay, that's all I need. But no, this is just wow.
Yeah,
It's in, it's just like sheer admiration that I have for this, and it's such a unique thing. And
yeah,
it is sort of
yes.
outside of the realm of competition a little bit, but I guess then that leads into the next natural question is, are there like pattern building competitions that you either take part in, preside over, or anything like that? Is this more of like a Zen Buddhist sort of path of self-awakening, self-discovery type thing?
Yeah, it's more so the latter. People have actually asked about, if there could be maybe like some live, demonstrations of pattern building, but I think maybe something like they did recently, the what was it, all games done quick or something like that
Yep.
was the. And I remember watching some of those videos and thinking, man, these people in the audience are just watching some dude play a game for like 45 minutes to an hour, and I thought it would be boring for like some of them, but they were all like totally digging it. So I guess maybe people would like watching, live pattern building, but it's debatable. I mean, there really isn't much of a difference between watching a non-sped up version of one of my pattern builds,
Mm-hmm.
versus watching it live. You're going to see the exact same thing. It's just you're not going to see a video of me there playing it or seeing me in person playing it.
Sure.
But I wouldn't be opposed to doing that. Um, but like in terms of doing like a competition or something like that, I think that's probably a long ways off.
Sure.
Um, when when I got to a certain point in my pattern building, I saw a couple other people start posting patterns that they had built. One guy's name is Integration, and the other guy's name is Blitz.
Mm-hmm.
And Blitz took it to a whole new level. I mean, honestly, Integration did too, because they did stuff that I hadn't done before. Like Integration did this. It was a Rainbow Bright pony or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and one thing he did was he expanded the width of the playfield, and he also added more colors to the Tetris pieces. So versus 7 pieces or 7 colors, he had like 9 or something like that. I forget how many it was. Maybe it
Sure.
was even more than that. It was like 11 or something. And Blitz, he built some really unique stuff. Like he used the background image of the playfield to incorporate that into what he was building. Like he built this one chessboard, and he actually had the background kind of already pre-mocked up for the pattern he was building. So
Hmm.
it's really cool stuff.
So with that said, then, I guess we'll just kind of wrap up here with some. I guess if you have any sort of final thoughts, or any sort of plugs you'd like to come in here with, or anything like that. So what do you got for sort of as a final roundabout thought?
Um, if you look at my YouTube channel now, you'll see there's been like ends of time where I'll like blast out, several videos. I'll get really hardcore in a creative moment, and then I'll have like a long period of time where I won't build anything. I would definitely encourage anyone checking out my channel to subscribe, and I will be uploading more content in time. But with as how busy life can get, it's like there's only so many hours in a day, and I usually will just let the creative juices flow, and if they spark something and make me like want to build something awesome, I'll do it right then. But if I don't have like some kind of super motivation or inspiration going on, I'm not gonna like push myself to build something just because, you know what I mean. So and plugs, I mean, definitely, I'd say check out my YouTube channel. I mean, that's the main hub for anything that you could find out about my pattern building. You can message me on there. And shout outs, man, there's too many to even say, but most of the people in the community who I've already given shout outs to know who they are, and it would be the same shout outs again. I mean, Kataru was one of the first. He really helped me when I first started building patterns. He helped me to elevate it, take it to new levels, and encourage me to do what I was doing, because there was really no one else encouraging me at that time. So he was pretty instrumental in my initial pattern building days.
Well, very cool. Well, thank you. This has been a premiere Skype interview with John Shuey Schubach. And this is Scott Dyer for Game Centric Television, signing off.